It is a tale of two cities in this country. It is a tale of two cities in this city. It's the best of times. It's the worst of times. The wealthy are doing spectacular, and everyone else is having a hard time. Why we're going to see Mamdani get elected in New York, why we see Trump get elected. Populism is surging, right? Bull market in populism, because we're debasing currencies. And so crypto plays perfectly. Like, we are in the golden era of crypto.
Break the cycle of exploitation, break down the barriers to truth, break into the next generation of privacy, break free. Free to scroll without being monetized, free from censorship, freedom without fear. We deserve more when it comes to privacy. Experience the next generation of blockchain that is private and inclusive by design. Break free with Midnight. Visit midnight.network/break-free. CoinDesk Bitcoin Treasury Month is brought to you by Genius Group, a Bitcoin treasury company listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker GNS. Genius is building toward a 10,000 Bitcoin treasury and just launched Genius Academy, featuring courses from Saifedean Ammous and more. Start learning for free today at geniusacademy.ai. Genius Group. Genius isn't measured in IQ, it's measured in Bitcoin. Looking for the best way to unlock your crypto's liquidity? Whether you're funding a major purchase like a down payment on a home, investing in new opportunities, or even buying more Bitcoin, Figure makes it straightforward and transparent. Take out a crypto-backed loan in the Figure app today. Mike Novogratz, welcome to CoinDesk Spotlight.
Excited to be here.
All right, well, we're here in your office.
That's true. It's the good thing about having a big office.
It is a good thing. I love to start these conversations here. Take me way back. What is your first memory of money really mattering?
It's a great question. My mother tells a story. It's actually kind of prophetic, that when I was 4 and my brother was 5, we lived in Torrance, California, and I had this great scheme that I collected leaves, yellow and reds, and I would sell the yellow leaves for 5 cents and the red leaves for 10 cents to neighbors. My brother would stand behind me. I was the salesman. He was the collector. And we, sold a bunch of leaves in the neighborhood. I'm guessing people thought we were just cute. And we took that money and we bought candy for our cross-country trips. We'd all pile in the back of a station wagon and we'd go visit the national parks. You had to have a candy box. But I knew you needed the money to get the candy. So now, 60 years later, I'm selling Bitcoin, magic internet money, leaves, magic internet money. I always thought that was kind of cute.
When you reflect on that story, bring us to where we're sitting today. How has that informed how you operate with money?
Well, listen, I come from a family of storytellers.
Yeah.
Storytellers to be raconteurs, to be funny, storytellers, to get a point across, storytellers can convince people of a certain opinion. And when I became a Wall Streeter at Goldman Sachs, I started in sales. Felt like I had a predisposition to be good at sales, so I thought I had an edge because I'd spent my whole life telling stories. And I had a pretty good career, first as a money market salesman, then as a international bonds and Japanese bond salesman. And a boss asked me, John Corzine, who was the big dog at the firm, he wanted me to switch to investing, to trading. And I was quite nervous because I was like, I knew I had an edge in sales. I have no idea if I'm going to be good at investing. Well, the type of investing I picked, macro investing, really is understanding what's happening in the world. And your bet is the story in some ways, right? Because you see what's happening, you see the story that's playing out in the world, you understand it, you bet on it, and then you tell other people the story so they can see your bet. And in lots of ways, that's my Bitcoin journey. I had a friend call me, said, hey, look at Bitcoin. I quickly Googled it before ChatGPT and realized it could be a pretty cool thing. It was trading about $90 a coin at that point, but the Chinese had started buying it. There were a lot of libertarians that were really excited for it. People really were worried about inflation, and so there was a real narrative. And so we bought some and started digging in. The reason I became, quite frankly, a prominent Bitcoin storyteller was because I couldn't keep my mouth quiet. At some conference that was an investor conference, I had a macro hedge fund. Somebody asked me about frontier currencies. They were talking about, of course, like the next level down emerging market currencies. Not the big emerging markets, but the Tanzanian currency. And I was like, don't get messed up with those. There's no liquidity. If you want a frontier currency, buy Bitcoin. And I didn't realize the press was there. And the next morning, I was on the cover of the FT. The only time I've been on the cover of the FT, unfortunately, I think, where it talked about Fortress and me predicting Bitcoin going much higher. And like this was one of the first Wall Street guys to talk about Bitcoin. And what was unique about that wasn't that you got on the newspaper, is that once you were outed as a Bitcoiner, especially as a guy that had been from Wall Street and ran a big hedge fund, the requests to speak just poured in. Can you speak at this conference? Can you speak at the Oxford Union? Can you speak at... And when you're going up in front of an audience, you don't want to look like a fool. And so it forces you to do a lot more homework. And so in some ways, me having that kind of cocky comment at that conference put me into the rabbit hole of really trying to understand what was unique about Bitcoin, what was unique about this whole cryptocurrency revolution. And my role in lots of ways, outside of being the CEO of Fortress, but in the crypto community, has been a storyteller, right? Our whole business, crypto, is a technology platform, but it's all built around narrative. And right, the value of Bitcoin comes from the social construct that you and I think it's got value, not from the chain itself. Otherwise, we'd fork the chain and call it Novo Chain, and maybe my cousins would buy it. But right, like that idea of narrative, of people agreeing on something, is the entire basis of crypto. And so it's a perfect industry for a storyteller.
What's the story that's playing out today? And I'm curious to hear if you think that there are any misconceptions in the Bitcoin story today.
Listen, I don't get to decide. What's cool about Bitcoin is there's no CEO. I don't get to decide what I think the only story should be. I'd like to sometimes. For instance, when the whole frenzy around ordinals came out, or Bitcoin for payments, I was always like, oh gosh, you make life much more complicated. It already has a lane. The lane is digital gold. Bitcoin is a store of value. It is digital gold for the new generation. Like, if I was the CEO, that would be the only story people could tell. Because if you all sing from the same song sheet, it resonates, right? If everyone's singing on the same tune, it sounds great. When it's a cacophony of other, B sharps and F flats, it doesn't sound as good. But I'm not the CEO of Bitcoin, and so if David Marcus wants to run payments on it, or people are building NFTs on it, they've got the right. And over time, those stories will either come and go, or they'll be part of the collective story. I actually still think Bitcoin's real story is just digital gold. And that's what Larry Fink bought into. It's what these institutions are buying into. It's what people in places where their currency becomes, really unstable are leaning on. And so I think that's the story that will persist. But the rest of crypto has other stories, right? And we're in this transition where, and you can see it in the price action. If you have a good, powerful story, you can continue to bring people into your community. I think crypto is all in some ways multi-level marketing. Can I bring enough people into my community to keep it growing? With a promise of some utility, right? And that utility is different per different crypto. It's payments, it's base layer of trust if you're Ethereum, or it's this global supercomputer. It's the blockchain of capital markets if you're Solana. All of those things need to happen in the future. They're starting to happen. The value that we get from the cryptos today is almost 90+% story and 10% less utility. Right? At one point, you think that will change. It will change when there's huge usage on the blockchains, when people start not even knowing they're using them, right? When it's the back of the TV. But I think what's unique about this asset class, and this is a really important point, is that if you are privileged enough to become money, Bitcoin became money, Ethereum became money, hard money, right? Solana is becoming money. You get valuation because you're money, not because you do so many transactions. And the so many transactions gives you the narrative to bring people in to trust you. So you got to do it well, and you got to not have it go down, and you've got to expand, and you got to have that narrative keep growing. And so I don't know how many communities are sustainable like that. And so I get really excited when I see something like Hyperliquid or even Pump.Fun when they have a token economic model that feels much more equity-like. I.e., if people use my platform and that platform makes money, that money is going to find its way back to the people that use it. We started the crypto journey with that in mind, and it got sidetracked in lots of ways because the SEC, Gensler, whatever, people were so nervous about what's a security token and what's a commodity token. I'm not going to take any risk. And then people were like, oh, you mean I don't have to offer anything to my token users to have my token can still trade well? Hey, that's a pretty good deal. And so there's been greed, and there's been, we'd worked for someone else, and so we have a lot of tokens that don't really give the token holder that much. And unless it becomes money, you can see them drift along, drift down, drift down, drift down. I think a Telegram is a really interesting use case. World-class CEO, Pavdarov, right? World-class product. Everyone used Telegram. The whole the crypto community used it. So they're going to launch a token. But because it wasn't a token that got you any of the Telegram economics, and it wasn't a token that came from the ground up, right? It was mostly in big institutions that bought stack, wealthy guys. No distribution. Price is down 50% this year with the rest of the world doing well. It's not money. How do you turn something from being a token into money? It's a really, really complicated and difficult. So far, we've had a few that have done it. XRP has done it, and that surprised everybody, right? Because
did it surprise you?
It did, and listen. We're a big owner of XRP, the company, but the token, because I had all the same reasons everyone else. It was less decentralized. It was not a true blockchain. You can all the criticisms at XRP. It missed something important. They built a fierce community of people that believed in their narrative and turned it into money. And for them, it's money.
That's interesting. I mean, given where you've come from, Goldman Sachs, Fortress, you lived through that 2008 financial crisis. Did you ever imagine we'd be sitting in a world where there would be these communities forming around this new type of money?
Nope, I didn't. I really didn't. And, you can look back at the macro and see why did it happen. It happened because we lost a lot of trust in the world after 2008. It happened because I remember even being before 2008 looking at, oh my God, Social Security and Medicare and the unfunded cost and government, we're going to have a debt problem in the future. Well, it is the future. We're $38 trillion in debt in the United States. Its debt to GDP is worse than Japan. Europe is no better. So how do you get rid of debt? You monetize it. And who gets hurt monetizing? People. So that story is now literally not in the future. It's today. And you're seeing it. You're seeing it across the board. It is a tale of two cities in this country. It is a tale of two cities in this city. It's the best of times. It's the worst of times. The wealthy are doing spectacular, and everyone else is having a hard time. They're having a hard time because their pricing power is being eradicated by the day. And so houses are more expensive, food is more expensive, everything is more expensive. And so why we're going to see Mamdani get elected in New York, why we see Trump get elected, populism is surging, right? Bull market in populism, because we're debasing currencies. And so crypto plays perfectly. Like, we are in the golden era of crypto. Add something else, that when you have this divisiveness in society, you also, it's not that we don't just trust the government, we don't trust each other, we don't trust religion anymore, or we don't trust other religions. And so people get tribal. And crypto is very tribal. Like I said, don't fuck with the XRP Army. You know?
I know that all too well.
Yeah, of course, as I have had, or even the Cardano Army. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, how sustainable are these communities? They're only as sustainable as the community continues to reinvent itself, injects new energy. And so great stewardship's important, both sometimes individual or community. Think about like Joe Lubin did with Ethereum. Ethereum had lost its narrative in lots of ways. Vitalik kind of went into the hinterland. It was getting crushed by everything. And he said, well, but we're actually, the project itself is doing great. It's growing, it's getting faster, the L2s are really working, it's having more stuff built on it. So he said the reality isn't bad, the story was bad. And so he came up with this idea of SBET and got Tom Lee with BNMR, and Joe's never said anything but great things about Tom because he cares about the Ethereum community. And those two, plus a couple other ETH DATs, brought energy back into, and energy really is new people, which makes price go up, which allows the community to thrive. And so it is a very different business model than we ever had in valuating stocks. What's unique and scary in some ways is it now happens in stocks as well. Palantir is a perfect case in point. It's the most expensive stock maybe in history. But man, do they have an army. They have a community. Tesla, Elon Musk is the master at it. Right? So he trades at a premium valuation, a persistent premium valuation because of his community, this narrative. And that's not, it just happened. That is a thought out process, right? That Elon Musk is Tony Stark. Someone came up with that narrative. It's a great one. And listen, he lives up to it, right? Tesla's a pretty awesome car. SpaceX is a pretty awesome company. If I go paralyzed, I know who I'm calling, you know? Right? And so, but that doesn't mean those valuations should be there. The valuations are there because of community.
You mentioned Mamdani. We're in New York. Are you going to be voting for Mamdani?
I'm not telling you who I'm voting for, but I've met him twice, and he is not as crazy as everyone thinks he is. He was very kind and thoughtful. But he's pretty direct. He was like, we got a rich-poor gap that's not being dealt with. And that's what his mission is. Me and him disagree pretty strongly on how to deal with it. I actually agree with him. I think we don't deal with this inequality gap, our country will continue to fracture, and then we will fall apart. We'll end in a revolution, and I would rather not have a revolution. I've been in places where I've seen revolutions, and they suck. You know, you lose civil society first, and you destroy lots of things before you rebuild. And so I'd like to see a different way to try to deal with this stuff. But some of it, we need to raise taxes on the people that make the most money. And everyone says, it's bullshit. Like, the top 1% had 19% of the wealth 20 years ago, and they have 33% of the wealth today. Like, that's a staggering difference. And in every new iteration of a bill, in the BBB, if you're wealthy, and I am, there are so many good little things you can do, from taking all your CapEx and depreciating it up front, right? And so people are trying to buy jets real quick so you can write the whole thing off this year, as opposed to over 13 years, or in real estate, 33 years. And so we probably need to do some of the things that he's advocating. That said, I'm a capitalist at my core, and this idea of socialism, like where that line between capitalism and socialism, right? There's a democratic capitalism, or capitalism with a compassionate side that we need. When it blends into socialism, i.e., city-run supermarkets, it just hasn't worked well in the past.
Yeah.
But he's on to a lot of things. We need more housing. I would never do rent control, but I would have the whole abundance idea of make it a lot easier to have housing. The permitting process going from X to 1/10 of X. Same thing. We've been trying to get our BIT license in New York. I actually had hair when we started. We are one of the top, handful of crypto companies in the city. We employ 700 people, and we still don't have a goddamn BIT license. It was a 500-page application. 500 pages, our application. It has cost us a fortune in legal fees in the process to do crypto in New York. But we're like, enough already. Yeah. Like you've got to make it easy for companies to do business if you want the economy to grow and for them to actually be able to pull people along. But again, when we have these people, everyone panics. Oh my God, man, we're going to leave New York. Listen, New York survived 8 years of de Blasio, and he sucked. Right? Mamdani is a good communicator. He's young. He's got ideas. We'll see if he learns. Really promising that he already said he's going to keep Jesse Tisch, even though they don't agree on a lot of the criminal justice stuff. And he was surprised because I do criminal justice. He was like, "Why would you like Jesse Tisch? She's not good on criminal justice." And I was like, "Listen, you need a safe city to do criminal justice, right? I don't think anybody, if you sit down with them, thinks our justice system should be unfair. It is unfair, so we got to make it more fair. But the priority has to make the city safe first. And so I'm hoping he's a man that can stop being a campaigner and an activist and a leader. That'll be the real. We'll know in 6 months, right? Does he decide he's the mayor of all New Yorkers and pivot to the center, or is he going to stay a bully pulpit activist? And, if you're in Congress, it's easier to stay a bully pulpit activist. But if you're an executive, if you're the mayor, your job is to lead. And so we'll see. I'm going to cheer for him.
Would you ever run for office?
Maybe.
Yeah?
Maybe one day. Though I don't know. The world doesn't really seem to need know-it-all billionaires to run the country. We got one right now, and I don't think it's working as well as it could. Like there's so much bias and privilege that comes from economic success, and I'm not positive it makes for the best, national leaders. You just look what Elon did when he was at head of Doge. It was a disaster, an unmitigated disaster because of the arrogance of his success that showed up. The chainsaw, all of those stupid things when he was doing something that needed to get done and could have been done with a different tone, not a bipartisan, it's all their fault. Like all the horseshit that went on, we lost the opportunity to cut government spending in a really thoughtful way. They had the mandate to cut government spending, and instead they politicized it and made monkeys' asses of themselves. Like that's the frustration. I sometimes think, man, they should have picked Jeff Bezos, right? He's a very methodical, great cost cutter. Like he could have, we didn't need the trapping of the ego.
CoinDesk Bitcoin Treasury Month is brought to you by Genius Group, a Bitcoin treasury company listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker GNS. Genius is on its way to hodling 10,000 Bitcoin in its treasury while educating the world on a Bitcoin-first future. Genius has launched the Genius Academy with courses from the likes of Saifedean Ammous, author of The Bitcoin Standard, Natalie Brunell, and many more. Start your Genius learning journey for free today at geniusacademy.ai and earn Bitcoin-backed gems. Genius Group. Genius isn't measured in IQ, it's measured in Bitcoin. Looking for the best way to unlock your crypto's liquidity? Figure is exactly what you need, being the largest non bank mortgage lender in the US with over $19 billion unlocked on their lending platform. Explore their industry low crypto backed loans at 8.91% interest rates at 50% LTV. They differentiate themselves by offering decentralized MPC custody, which protects your crypto ownership in a segregated wallet. They've also recently launched liquidation protection, which protects you from liquidation during large price drops. Whether you're funding a major purchase like a down payment on a home, investing in new opportunities, or even buying more Bitcoin, Figure makes it straightforward and transparent. Visit their app or click our link below to take out a crypto-backed loan with Figure today. We're talking about inequities here. Crypto was really created to address financial inequity, and I'd love to hear your perspective here. Do you think we run the risk of replicating some of the same issues we had in the traditional financial system that we're trying to address with crypto now that the traditional financial system is playing such a big part in such a major way?
Listen, we've done a few things that are cool, right? We've created this new pool of wealth that didn't exist that ended up in a lot of new hands. It just did. Some old hands that were rich. I was rich beforehand, so I got richer because I got into crypto early. But there were lots of people that weren't. And so we've certainly distributed wealth in a way that has never been distributed. The real promise of crypto, though, was can we cut out the middleman?
They're back, it feels.
Well, forget in Bitcoin because it's not like there's a big take. I'm talking about can we have peer-to-peer music, peer-to-peer ticketing, peer-to-peer credit, peer-to-peer. Can we get to a decentralized world where there's a platform that we trust, where that giant VIG, I mean, you talk to anyone who's a young artist that deals with a music company. Like, oh, I can't believe I signed away my 5 albums. There's so many stories in every industry where businessmen extract a pretty good rent. Can we narrow that rent and actually in some places eliminate it? That hasn't happened yet. That is the challenge and test of crypto in the next 10 years. It's ready for the first time because we have blockchains that are going to be fast enough and trusted enough. And hopefully we're going to have regulation that's going to allow people to feel comfortable building those ecosystems. But it's not a foregone conclusion. Mm-hmm. Right? My first cool idea to explain crypto to people that didn't understand it was this fictional company called Duber, right? Decentralized Uber. And I had a token economic model that I thought was genius. And I remember I met the guy who actually built the real Uber, Travis, a complete frickin' beast of a businessman. And after having a 2-hour lunch with him, I was like, he's probably right. There's no way. He was uniquely suited at that time to smash every rule to get that company built. And I don't know if a decentralized community could have done it. That doesn't mean a decentralized version can't come in now. And so we'll see where decentralized efforts can work and where they can't work. The experiment hasn't been run long enough. But that's really the promise of this whole crypto revolution, was flattening and making things more available. We'll see with tokenization. I have this hope that young kids in Cambodia are going to own Galaxy stock and tokenize shares, or a portfolio of Galaxy and Apple and Google, and I like to throw myself in with those guys. But also, credit funds, stable coins that pay interest. Like, that wallet should be a sophisticated bank account for the kid in Cambodia on his scale, as well as the wealthy person in New York City. Like, the technology is there now, and so we'll see. In 10 years, are we going to feel good about this, or is there going to be a bunch of guys that got rich because they got into Bitcoin early?
I want to come back to what you were talking about with your work in criminal reform. Talk to me about what drives you there. Why is that something that you want to spend your time on?
I don't know where it came from, but probably from my upbringing. Fairness is kind of my driving principle. I want things to be fair. And, fair is a loaded word. If you look at our justice system in America, it's just not fair. We treat people from different zip codes woefully different, different races different. And so, and it's also just a mean-spirited, ugly, brutal system, and it doesn't have to be. I'll give you 2 examples. I was just in Maine. I flew up to Maine to visit a prison, and we took like 10 people up there. There are 50 states in America. There is one that has a prison system where you're like, whoa, somebody got the message. And there's a guy who's my age who looks tougher than me. He's got the kind of the Marine haircut, flat top, a little bit stockier. And 12 years ago, he was put in charge of the Maine prison system. And he said, I should remember his name because I met him and spent hours with him, but he said, I wanted to make it safer for my guards. I wanted to make it safer for the communities that we live in, and I wanted to make it safer for the inmates. And so he approached it, let's treat the inmates like they're citizens with dignity that have lost their liberty. Let's try to make sure when they leave, and 98% of people that go to jail will leave, that they're good citizens, that they're taxpayers. And so from the very top, he just shifted. We're going to be about rehabilitation and dignity, not about punishment and lack of dignity. That was it. And 10 years, 12 years later, the whole system feels good. He had these dogs all over the place, the comfort dogs, and they train comfort dogs there, but they also have the comfort dog, which lowers the temperature. Fights in the the medium security part, which is not minimum security by any stretch. It's what prison looks like to most people. Went from 1 to 3 a day to 1 to 3 a month, down 30%, 30x time. He had, job training and work training, and in his lowest security part, where people had the worst sentences and had been there the longest, but had already matured into humans that were different than the ones that committed the infractions that got him in there. He had, none of the cells were locked. There was a butcher's knife there even for them to cook. I was like, that butcher's knife in a prison? Well, of course, because he trusted those 40-odd gentlemen that had spent at least 10 years each, there and had matured into someone who wasn't going to commit a crime anymore. And that's what our system should be. And you flip it the other side. There's a movie that came out called The Alabama Solution. It's on HBO. It was actually done by a friend of mine, Andy Jarecki. And it shows what the Alabama prison system looks like. He had 2 cell phones. 2 guys are actually Galaxy leaders. We have this fellowship in our philanthropy that we give to people that are trying to change that system. It's a 2-year grant and lots of training. And the only 2 that we have that were in the system were these guys in the movie. And it is a hard movie to watch, I will tell you that. You should all watch it, but it's a hard movie to watch. Because you're like, how can we be treating people like this? This is just insanity in the year 2025. Worse than animals in lots of ways. And the brutality and the mindset. And so same country, we have 49 states with the wrong mindset. One state got it right.
You mentioned fairness. It sounds like you're really driven clearly by fairness, by trust, and almost, maybe I'm digging here, but almost by identifying broken systems and doing what you can to kind of, contribute. Where do you think that comes from? I mean, I think about your background, wrestler at Princeton, 6 siblings, flying helicopters in the Army. What about these experiences have made you this person sitting here today?
It's a good question. Listen, my dad was an immigrant son. Grew up in a poor Pennsylvania cement town. Quiet, but very ethical in the way he approached things. And so that's part of it. My sister got into changing the world really early. She runs a thing called the Acumen Fund. And so there was some of that was just there was an expectation. I was raised Catholic. I don't go to church very often anymore. But, that cliche, to whom much is given, much is expected. And my mom pounded that into our heads. Like you would have thought we were rich. We had like one bathroom and 7 kids, but like.
Did that contribute to your competitiveness?
Yeah. But we were raised wealthy in some crazy. I mean, we were not wealthy. We were very middle class. But like the mindset was you got to give back because you have so much. And we're like, well, looking back, we didn't have that much. We actually only had one brush. It was a huge fight over the brush.
How did you? What was your strategy to getting?
I had great hair too. I needed the brush at that point. That was in my golden era. But I think some of that is just family, and some of it's curiosity. Like the most interesting journeys I've been on have come from philanthropy. You start peeling the onion back, you're like, this is crazy. I was just down in New Orleans and I was trying to help on something. You learn so much about the community by having conversations with people in the community, and you learn so much history. And so if you're willing to get outside of your own little bubble and into someone else's mess, and there's always a mess, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't need help. You realize there's a complicated tapestry of things that happened to create that mess. And so, part of that energizes me. And I look back, if I was writing like my biography, some of the coolest things I've done in life, I marched in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, have all been some offshoot from the philanthropy I've done. More so than from being a Goldman Sachs partner. Goldman was really good at that too. The moment you became a partner, they actually helped you set up your own foundation. They're like, oh, by the way, you're one of us now and we give. And so there was an expectation as a Goldman partner that you would become a philanthropist, that you would give some of your money away, that you'd become a steward of your community. So if there's not a hospital, a school, any nonprofit in New York where you won't find a Goldman partner on.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a next one. I mean, they're everywhere. In public service. So you can create that. Bear Stearns had the same thing. Bear Stearns had a culture of that as well. And so a lot of culture comes from the top.
You mentioned your dad immigrated. You're very vocal on immigration and immigration policy. Talk to me a little bit about where you think we are.
So I studied this a long time, and we're the greatest country on earth because we know how to integrate immigrants. And New York City, now Dubai is getting close, but there's more languages spoken in New York City than any other place in the world. There's a regulator on how many immigrants you can take at the same time without it start fracturing society. And we completely blew that in the 5 years, the Biden years mostly, for dumb reasons. Partly there was a surge, and we didn't want to be, for political reasons, bad guys, right? I think Biden made a lot of mistakes. But you can't take every person at the same time because then society breaks down. And you can see that in Europe. Places like Sweden where they took too many people at the same time, then you get these terrible backlashes. And so more study, more work has to be done on what is the right amount of immigrants per year and how do they integrate. If you look at, it's not even race, right? If you look at Nigerian immigrants to this country, they've crushed it, right? The number one immigrant success story in America by a country mile are Indians. Indians make more per capita than Germans. I'm the biggest immigrant group are German or Austrian Germans. We're barely above the mean. Indians are 2x us, right? And so our country is a country, this idea of melting pot, salad bowl debate that you had when you were in 5th grade. We start off as a salad bowl, we become a melting pot. What's unique about America is by the 3rd generation, less than 2% of the kids speak their mother tongue, i.e. they become Americans. And they keep some of the culture, some of the clothes, some of the songs, but they're Americans first. Hence the term of Indian American or Arab American or French American, right? Ronald Reagan famously said, well, you don't have Indian French, like, and so we don't want to lose that completely. And I fear right now with this white nationalism that you can sense that's happening in the country, right? If it's J.D. Vance literally antagonizing his wife, I mean, I was like, well, he's got to go home to that, like it's just so unnecessary, because what's made us great. And again, I'm not saying we didn't take in too many immigrants. Like you've got to have the right policy at the right time, but I'm really worried we're pivoting away the other direction.
If we continue at the current status quo, tell me a little bit more about that worry. What are you worried we head towards?
Well, starting with this woman who was a summer intern for us last year. I know her parents. She's Indian, went to Columbia, paid to go to Columbia, had planned on, her community's here now. She spent, working here. Gotta go, right? You have 15 months after you graduate, and then you're gone. And normally 10b5, but it's $100,000, and employees don't want to pay the extra $100,000 for a young kid. And so we're going to chase a lot of our young talent that has stayed in America, made lives in America, created companies in America somewhere. She's going to move to London. Doesn't want to. Mm-hmm. And so at a very core level, we're going to chase away talent. We're going to educate them and then chase them away. It makes absolutely no sense. If you look at NVIDIA, immigrant. Google, 2 immigrants. Like, our great companies are founded by immigrants. Tesla, immigrant. Like, name one that's not. Microsoft, run by immigrant. Like, and so we are a country that does best as a fabric of people from all over the place that become Americans. And this idea that you have to have, come from the Mayflower or be white is just an anathema to like what our country has been. And there's a feeling of that. I mean, there's part of the Republican Party that is, that we have allowed bigotry and anti-Semitism and racism to be normalized on TV. I was watching Nick Fuentes of all, like, that he even allowed on TV. I was like, in my day and age, I'd knock the shit out of the guy. I literally would. I was like, for the kind of stuff he says. But now he's part of the debate. I was like, he should not be part of the debate. That's so far outside what our country stands for. He shouldn't be part of the debate. But that's where we're at. And so how do you get it back? One party is going to have to, show a vision of America that a lot of people want. But we don't have it now. We have, like, we're 50-50 split, and you've got MAGA that's got a 40%, and they've got a real strong view. The rest of the country doesn't necessarily buy into it. And so what you hope is that through all this turmoil comes some healing message in the middle that the country buys into. But I am worried because you haven't seen that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you voice a worry that many people who are watching this are experiencing, and so it's great to hear your perspective and how you're thinking about it as we, navigate through this. I want to pivot now and talk a little bit about Galaxy.
Awesome.
You IPO'd this year.
We did.
Congratulations.
It was a big milestone for the company.
Did a big sigh there. I mean, it was...
Well, because we went public on the Canadian market with the idea that we'd be a couple years there and we'd come to the U.S. That's what they sold to us. That's what the SEC sold to us. And we were literally 3-4 months slow and missed the Jay Clayton cutoff. And then we got stuck in the Gary Gensler mud machine. And it felt so unfair. It felt so un-American. It was so frustrating because you had Coinbase and Marathon, MicroStrategy that had access to the capital markets. And the U.S. capital markets just are the capital markets. We are so much deeper, bigger, and better here than anywhere else. No offense to Canada, because they were great.
I'm Canadian. I don't know if you know that. I thought you were going to get up and walk away.
But the Canadian capital markets are tiny relative to the U.S. And so and even worse, because we had started the process with the SEC, we couldn't even tell our story in the U.S., or that would be seen as priming the pump that took 5 years to end up us being able to use. And so we were stuck in this bad limbo of no access to capital markets, or very limited access to capital markets, and wanting to build a business and seeing our competitors run. And so the sigh of relief was like, the playing field's fair. Again, it's that fairness thing.
Yeah.
If they had said no crypto companies can come in, but you let a few in, but now you're not letting anyone else in. Like I really think part of regulation and part of law has to be people get treated the same. And, that's written into how we're supposed to think about things, but it doesn't always happen.
People are always interested in what folks like you who've made quite a bit of money on crypto have to say about some of the different assets in the space. We've already talked about XRP. I know that you have a 70-30% portfolio split, 70% Bitcoin, 30% other things. What are some of those other assets that you are focused on, you think have long-term value that you're locked in on?
So I think the hyperliquid ecosystem is really worth looking at. They've got some changes to make over time to be regulatory compliant.
Yeah.
Once they know what the new rules are. So you're going to see the U.S. hopefully in the next 4 months pass legislation that'll define rules, and then I think companies like Hyperliquid will make the changes to be compliant with those rules. But it's a token economic model that really works, and there's a regulatory arb in it, in that if we let DeFi in and it's permissionless, it's a whole lot less cumbersome than what a company like I have to deal with KYC and AML with every single customer. And so it's a really big question that's being wrestled in D.C. right now with both the SEC and the Congress is, where does responsibility lie in a permissionless system, in a decentralized system? There's actually no one to arrest in the Bitcoin system, and so if what I think is going to happen, and this is where I think the Trump administration is going to get great kudos from crypto and deserve it, that we're going to broadly allow and actually promote decentralized systems, then I think companies like that, where the token economic works, have a really interesting. And there's, my friend started a company called Unit, which does the spot and equity perps, and so you could see a whole new world grow up over there. That's a really interesting space right now.
I believe you were in D.C. recently at the 2 Senate roundtables.
I was.
I heard one of the sticking points was DeFi.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the conversations that were had around DeFi there? Do you think that we're going to be able to get to an agreement?
I'll frame it. I don't want to talk about the specific conversations. That was a meeting that happened, and I think it was a good meeting because the classic politics, the Democratic side, somebody leaked a very early draft of a talking point, which pissed everyone on the right off because they'd spent so much time getting there. The sides are much closer than you think, and I think while the Democrats are more nervous about DeFi, they're going to get there, and there'll be some things, I'm guessing, like when we use DeFi, we have a best practices protocol of using things like Chainalysis to make sure we're not transacting with OFAC banned people, and to the best you can, right? And so, what's the best practices? It wouldn't surprise me if something like that ends up in the bill, that you're forced to at least have this minimum level of compliance. Yeah. But I think we're going to broadly get DeFi enshrined in the new legislation, which is a stunning home run for our industry, because our industry is DeFi. Bitcoin by its definition, Satoshi was writing about DeFi, and so we can't have crypto without DeFi. It's not crypto, and so I think we're going to get there.
When do you think we get market structure?
Before end of January. I think probably the first part of next year. I don't think it's going to get done by. The Republicans want to get it done by Thanksgiving, and it's just we're 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
So, but I do think it's going to happen in early first part of the year.
I heard you say recently everyone's looking for this $1 million Bitcoin. I heard you say recently, if we get there too fast, it actually is a poor indicator as to where we are in the economy.
Yeah, listen, crypto is a report card on how the country's doing, the stewardship of the country. And crypto prices going higher have broadly been, you guys are debasing the currency, and therefore we want somewhere to store our money. If we go from 100,000 to 1 million in the next 5 months, something really bad happened. And when shit really bad happens, people lose their lives, people lose their livelihoods. If you're going to need crypto to, not enough people will own crypto to protect their wealth if it goes that fast. And like when everyone loses wealth, that's literally you lose civil society. People start shooting each other, people start robbing things, people, like the level of desperation. I mean, there was like cannibalism in Venezuela 2.5 years ago. Not a lot of it, but like people were that desperate. I was going to go visit just to see it, and my Venezuelan friends wouldn't let me. They were like, dude, it is too dangerous. And I'm like, I'm not scared. They were like, you don't want to go. Now it's gotten a little better, but not great. And so, yeah, I'd like Bitcoin to get to 1 million in about 4 years.
I think that timeline is still, it's still quick. 4 years is not that far away.
I'm teasing. Yeah.
Okay.
If it got there in 10 years, we'd be thrilled, to be fair.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I do think it will go higher because I don't think there's a silver bullet to get the $38 trillion of debt back in the bucket without inflation. The one, I guess, Hail Mary maybe is, we hit AGI and we have this deflationary world because these phones are so productive, it's just insanity, and no one works, and we have our own problems at that point.
Like
if
a whole different
if
set
you have
of
a deflation
problems.
collapse because no one can get a job,
Yeah.
that's a different set of problems.
What do you think of Senator Lummis's plan for the Bitcoin Treasury to start to address some of the national debt?
I think it's kind of a smoke and mirrors. I mean, like, listen, as a Bitcoin guy, you'd love the Treasury to buy them. Like, when you are the reserve currency, like, it's your responsibility to hold the value in the reserve currency. Like, and it's almost like saying, you can't say, we're the reserve currency, but not really. Like, we don't believe in it ourselves. When you're the reserve currency, you need to do everything as a country. Scott Bessent needs to do everything as the Secretary of Treasury. Trump needs to do everything as a president to get people to trust that America is going to be great stewards of our capital. That's how you get to become and stay the reserve currency. And there are so many advantages of being the reserve currency, right? And if you're not, someone else is. Where we have an advantage right now is there's not a real pretender or contender. Europe really isn't. They're a mess. China still has a capital control currency. You can't be the reserve currency if you have capital controls. They have a pretty stable currency, but they have capital controls, and they're not ready to let go of those capital controls. So gold has been the outlet, and you saw what happened to gold. It does seem like gold had a blow-off top, but that could be a short-term blow-off top, and you take another run up. And so, yeah, I think the administration, because they care about crypto a lot, and it's been a big part of their success story, will find a way to use that reserve somehow. But I don't think you're going to see us buying billions of dollars of Bitcoin into it. Dane.
You mentioned your philanthropic work being some of your most rewarding. When I say that now, what's that one project that sticks out for you that you kind of get warm and fuzzy about?
I did a thing at Princeton, of all places. I didn't want to give money to Princeton because it's so damn rich, but I really liked this woman, Shirley Tillman, who was the president of Princeton at the time, and she made the pitch about why the universities needed money, mostly for long-dated science funding. And anyway, my wife and I pledged some money to help fund a thing, and then we finally endowed it called the Bridge Year, where every kid that gets into Princeton gets a letter and invited to apply for a Bridge Year fellowship. And they pick 42 kids, and those kids spend their first year on a gap year. and they go to one of 7 countries in cohorts of 6. So 6 kids will go to Cambodia or to China or to India, and they'll live with host families. And most of them haven't traveled so much. Most of them are middle class, hardworking kids that, but not all, but some wealthy kids go as well. But you go live in Senegal with a host family, you come back so much more mature.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're a top 1%er in the world if you make around 50K, right? You're not even median income in America, but you're a top 1%er. So you go to Senegal and you're like, I'm so privileged. I thought I was a middle class kid.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was a working class kid, and I'm actually 1%er. And so there's a huge empathy growth. Kids come back, they're much more serious. They have friends. It's not like you're a lacrosse player, you're a bridge-year person. It's a little weird, it's a little culty. Mm-hmm. But it has already developed such wonderful kids, and a ton go into social causes. And so that's probably my favorite.
Yeah. Travel is so important for bringing perspective, especially for young people.
I gave one commencement address. And I normally, when I talk, I just go and talk and talk and talk. But for a commencement address, I thought, I'm going to make every word count. Mm-hmm. And I remember one sentence, and I was talking about travel. I was like, well, you realize your way of life is a way of life, not the way of life, right? Like, when you're from Iowa, you think this is the way of life. It's the way your community chose to live. But there's so many other ways of life. And I think that's the big empathetic thing you get in travel.
Do you remember when you had that first realization?
I went to the Mideast with my sister after graduation. We went to Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. And my sister's kind of like save the world, development person. And, just going through Gaza refugee camp, 1987. This is right before the first Intifada broke out. And sitting and talking to people about their lives. And Egypt, same thing. I remember getting a shave on the street in Egypt. And I was like, my sister's like, we're right in the middle of like the AIDS epidemic, and got some guy cutting my face up with a dirty razor in Egypt. And she was like, I got to teach you how to travel better. But I did. You realize that people are people in general. They like storytelling. They like drinking. They like, bonding. But that was my first cool trip.
If you were to go back and talk to your younger self before you moved to New York, before you joined Goldman Sachs, what would you say? What advice would you give that Mike?
Probably drink just a little bit less.
I heard you throw a good party.
I throw a lot of parties. I would tell my younger self, not be so scared of failure. Like, I have failed a few times and it feels miserable, but like, it's an opportunity for growth. It's my wife's line. And that's like, sounds cliche, but when you go through it, it is. And multiple times in my life, I thought, I can't believe. I remember when I left Goldman Sachs, and it wasn't a pleasant way to leave. I had this really cool job where I was president of Goldman Latin America, and I had all these bright people. And I remember thinking to myself, I might never have this many smart people work for me again. And I was really sad that I'd messed up that opportunity, because I had this amazing group of people working for me. And that wasn't the truth. When I left, first, I'll never be this rich again. Not that being rich is that important, but I remember thinking that. It's like, I blew it. Well, it wasn't the truth. I'm richer today than I was at any time at that point. And so that fear of what you could lose is an overblown fear. And so don't be so afraid of losing things, of failing. I mean, you should have gone out and fail on purpose, just for the fun of it. But the fear of failure stops a lot of success. People are so nervous about what's the guy going to think about me. If you can get over that fear of failure, and that takes, the fear of failure comes from somewhere. You think you're going to fail, therefore you won't be loved. It's always
it's a
back to your
survival instinct.
Well, it's your mom and dad.
Yeah.
It's always your mom and dad. Like, becoming an adult is realizing your mom and dad tried their hardest, and you're going to love them anyway, even though they screwed you up. because every mom and every dad screws up their kids somehow. And that's like the human story. But like that, you got to learn to get rid of that fear of failure.
Where did your risk appetite come from?
It's funny because I had this one fear of failure, and I think I fought it by like just taking risks.
That's why I'm asking.
Partly I think it's like the physical risks that I always had. I would jump off a building. I like drive a motorcycle fast or ski like a maniac, even though I wasn't very talented. Like I remember I would ski, and I was with really good skiers. Like, dude, you can't ski like that anymore. We're not going to go with you because you're going to kill yourself, and I don't want to be when you. And I was like, no, I'm good. They're like, no, you suck. Slow down. And so, physically, I was more fearless, even irrationally so, but emotionally, I was really scared. Like I lost most of the big wrestling matches in my life before I stepped on the mat because I was so nervous. And so, I don't know. I think I was born with the physical side, but the emotional side and even the market side. Like I almost quit my hedge fund at one point, right after I started, even though I was successful, because I was so miserable. I was like, I'm so stressed all the time, fear of failure. And I remember my wife said, you just hired your best friend. You can't quit because he just left his firm. I was like, that's a good point. And I had a couple breakthroughs about why I was good at what I did that helped. And I kind of did the work. And you know, what is the work? The work is therapy in some ways. However you want to do therapy. You can do it by praying. You can do it by meditation. You can do it with a therapist. You can do it with ayahuasca. There are 100 ways to get to what you're scared of. But you got to get to what you're scared of so you're not scared of it anymore.
Have you done ayahuasca?
I've done ayahuasca. That's my, shouldn't show my tattoos when it comes to crypto, but that is my spirit animal, the panther.
I got to hear more about the ayahuasca experience. I don't think we have a lot of time left, but
yeah,
what drove you to that, and how did you come out of it?
Curiosity. I'd read about it. I had started studying psychedelics. I was one of the first investors in psychedelics, so psilocybin for depression. Me and a guy named Christian Angemeyer invested in Compass Pathways. It started in my office. And I remember Joe Rogan had talked about it way back. Joe Rogan, shout out. He was the first guy to talk about ayahuasca publicly. And so I was like, all right. Now that took courage. In the middle of freaking nowhere, you're drinking some potion. And I'll tell you one funny side story. I on the third day, I decided I would take the hero's dose because I'm an idiot.
What the hero's dose is?
You know, you take a normal dose. The glass was overflowing.
Okay.
And it didn't go well. And I had a very hard time. But at one point I was a panther on the ground, growling and crawling around. And I don't know, months later I'm at a dinner party. I'm telling this story to this friend and happened to write for Billions. And a few months later, the season opens and there's Axe crawling around, growling. And I'm like, that son of a bitch took my story. And I called him, I was like, dude. And he's like, it was too good of a story not to use. So Axe's ayahuasca trip in Billions was inspired with that little panther right there.
Oh my gosh, what a story. What a story to end the interview on. Mike, thank you so much for sitting down with me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.